Whether the government or the populace likes it or not, same-sex couples are part of our modern living, and I don't think the government has really any right to regulate that kind of domestic situation.
I don't think government should get involved in what the relationships between people.
So how did you get involved in doing this? I mean, did you want to do this?
We got involved when our church, the Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto, in consultation with lawyers, had discovered in Ontario law a method of issuing a legal marriage certificate to a same-sex couple through something called the reading of the banns, which is where a church announces on 3 consecutive Sundays its intention to marry a couple. The church had selected couples, but they had found that the couple they had selected, one of them had already been married, which disqualified them from the banns. So they had announced their intention to perform, same-sex marriages, had announced the couple to the media, and had to find a replacement couple. Our pastor had phoned Kevin at work, knew we had already had a holy union, a commitment ceremony with no standing in law, but knew of our desire to be married, and said, how would you and Joe like to come forward and be the test case couple? And he said, at the same time, I have to know in an hour, and if you say yes, CBC News World will be in your living room tonight.
Oh my. So then what happened?
Well, Kevin phoned and actually got my voicemail and proposed to my voicemail, so romance is not dead. And he asked me if I would like to do this, and we had very little time, and we took some time to say, are you prepared for, the ramifications of going forward? And when we both said yes, neither of us had any idea what those ramifications would be. In fact, no one involved in the situation realized the media attention that would grow around this or how significant an event this would be.
You didn't realize you were the first couple in the world to do this at the time?
We did. We just didn't understand that doing that, the media interest would be as great as it was. We thought, there would be some media interest, but it wouldn't be over the sustained period of the 6 weeks leading up to the wedding and the 5 years since then. We thought, this would be a small story or a news item that has a very limited lifespan. We really didn't understand what we were saying yes to.
So when did the bad stuff start happening?
After the first Sunday that they read the banns, there were no objections. Again, as I mentioned, the church discussed with us the reading of the banns, which is where they announce the intention to marry, and any member of the public can come and object to the marriage. And lawful objections are you are underage, you are already married, you're related by blood. But being of the same sex was not a lawful objection under Ontario law. The Ontario statute said any 2 persons may use this method. And so when the church read the banns the first Sunday, there were no objections, but the second Sunday, there were objections. And when the media interest and the objections starting to grow, that's really when the reactions started.
So what were the objections at that second reading of
They
banns?
were, in essence, based on religion, and they said that, according to the Bible, marriage between 2 men or 2 women was unlawful. Well, this is not a valid objection according to the law, and so the church rejected those objections to the marriage.
Even though it was a religious objection, the church deferred to the legal
Right, because the church was really acting as the government agency to issue the record of marriage. So it was in accordance with secular law, not church law, that the objections can be launched.
So then what happened?
There were objections, they were rejected, and after 3 readings of the banns on January 14th, 2001, the Reverend Brent Hawkes married us. And immediately afterwards, the Ontario government refused to register the marriages. And
just let's go back a little bit. What were the nature of the threats and who was threatening you?
The various groups that were threatening both Kevin and I and the church, the vast majority of them identified themselves as acting out of a religious background, a religious point of view that God called them to do this. And they were threatening to do things like blow up the church. They threatened Kevin and I with death. There were credible threats to both people and property, and the church responded with providing the appropriate levels of control and protections. I mean, I was married on a Sunday, and my pastor, Reverend Hawkes, who was to perform the marriages that afternoon, was assaulted at the 11 o'clock service by somebody who claimed she was acting in the name of God. She claimed to be a prophet of God who had told her to come to the church and to stop the weddings. And when she tried to disrupt the worship service, you know, she assaulted Reverend Hawkes at the point. So people acting in the name of God tended to have very violent reactions to what was going on.
These are obviously, well, presumably extremist people, but indicative of how strongly held the religious views are about gay marriage.
Well, certainly, I think anytime you touch on an issue that touches someone's faith, be that secular or faith in an institution, you're going to revoke an extreme reaction from them, because our faiths are really what make us up as people, and so we're dealing with the core fundamental elements of human existence here. So,
do you think by getting married in a church, you undercut or eroded religious freedom in Canada?
I don't think so at all. In fact, I think by the church taking a leadership role in fighting for marriage, it actually strengthened religious freedom in Canada. You know, what we saw was that by a church exercising its right to marry people it felt called to marry, and by taking that into the legal system, we really debunk the myth that somehow when we deal with the issue of gay rights or homosexuality, it is gays versus God. It isn't. There is not monolithic religious opposition to marriage between
So it's an interpretation, and you have one interpretation, other religious faiths have another.
Right, and you know, where the argument comes in is, should one religious group be able to impose their view on all other religious groups?
We'll be back after these messages.